Well, it seems as if it's working. We had a little difficulty for our Thursday show, but everything's smooth today. That's really nice. Welcome to JWC Livestream. This is Poetic Deep-dive. That's what's going on Mondays until the return of our David. So in the meanwhile, you'll have to deal with me and my ramblings about a subject that I don't know that I'm fully equipped to tackle. That being poetry. That's what this show's about, hence the name Poetic Deep Dive. We're deep diving. We're trying to figure out the mysteries behind it all. And we're going to do all kinds of kooky stuff if the world keeps spinning. We'll have different kinds of content. But right now, that's what this is. We're deep diving into poesy. Poetry, poesy. Poesy is the old word for the writing of poetry, the reading, the studying, the writing. As a lifestyle, it used to be fashionable to say, I'm a poet. And when you said that, heads turned. Nowadays, you're lucky if you get a scoff. And that's unfortunate. Poetry is a big deal. Beyond its beauty, beyond its cosmic timelessness, it teaches you how to compose meaningful sentences and informs your paragraphing. There's nothing it doesn't do or hasn't done for me, I should say, because I came up as a poet. That's how I learned how to write my prose and my, all the fiction I write. And now I'm doing this, I'm doing that. But you got to honor your roots. You got to go back where you came from. So that's why I do this show. And to honor other people too. But, some people don't wish to be honored. And that's fine. Free country. Or world, we would hope, embraces freedom. In this particular case, lately, I've been writing some ghoulish poems charged with dark energy. That's the accusations. And it really brings me back to my original days, because my poems in the old days were, they were the same way. They were dark, angsty, and strange, usually. I like weird. Writing weird is good. No one ever sat me down and said poems can't be weird, poems can't be spooky. In fact, I think they benefit from that sort of thing. It all depends on what you're trying to do. But sit down this week and try to write a poem. That's the message here. Read a poem, if not, but write a poem if you can, if you feel inspired. Inspiration is a big deal. A friend of mine and I, we have conversations about the nature of poetry. He's very, very impacted by it. And there's a lot to learn from someone who has that type of view of things. There's a lot to learn. And more so, you can be inspired by someone like that. And inspiration is the highest coin in the realm. It's what you want if you're a writer, if you're trying to throw words down. So I got to write a couple poems. The muse is knocking on the door. There's a backup of inspiration. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. I'm gonna read one of mine on this show, because I feel that it's important. And the potential of new poets it's always there. Someone who could pick it up. That sort of thing has been happening lately. Writers I know, they've just suddenly tried to do this, tried to do that. Expand your horizons and lead raiding parties out of your comfort zone into the wilderness. so that you can learn, so you can differentiate yourself and achieve voice fulfillment. That's your own unique style on the page, folks. We have terms. Poetry helps to do that. Trying to do it. Beautify language. Don't listen to them. They'll tell you not to beautify language. But you have to sometimes. Not every 10 minutes, but there has to be a good dose of that. You have to remind people in their cubicles what beauty is. Let me put it to you that way. Expand, explore. Don't expand like me. That's not the kind of expanse I'm referring to. So we have been going over poetry. Last month it was Victorian verse, Victorian poesy. And this month we're going over Charles Bukowski. And I'm trying to pick from his work the kind of thing that is not so often associated. I don't know that these would be ones he read when he was doing his reading. And there's a huge to-do with poetry, performance poetry versus poetry for the page. That's a discussion that we've been having lately. And whether or not Charles Bukowski is both. Leave a comment if you have anything to say about it, because I really don't have much to say about it. I think the type of poetry he wrote was for a certain type of person. There's poetry that's very accessible, and there's poetry that's very remote. I think there's no way we can disagree about that. There's plenty to disagree about in life, but I think that that's true. I think there's remote poetry, and I think there's very, very up close and personal poetry for the street, you know? And I think that's what Hank was. Hank was a street poet, because if you listen to the way he talks in his interviews, and you hear his when he's at his readings, there's a certain attitude he has. I don't know that all poets are ready for fisticuffs 24 hours a day. But Hank, he seemed to want to be that way, ready to get bloody. Ready to get bloody at any moment. This, of course, is a charming one. He had it rough. He was throwing manuscripts at publishing houses, and they were throwing them back as hard as they possibly could. He had a long while there where he didn't know if he was going to make it. There's a lot that hinges on that potentiality, you know. This whole show would have been obliterated if that was the case, if he was never in print. And there was a moment where he thought about giving up. You know, never give up. You do the dream until there's no more dream, you know. He must have had a dream. He doesn't say so, but he must have had a dream. I think it's that poem about the little bird. There's a little bluebird he has, I think, in his heart, if I remember correctly. I'm not sure. I'm hoping I'm not botching that into the abyss. I'm 99% sure that that's what it is. But I think he did have a dream. But this was what he had to walk through. Let's read this one. This is Charles Bukowski from Love is a Dog from Hell. And this poem is called Cockroach. The cockroach crouched against the tile while I was pissing, and as I turned my head, he hauled his butt into a crack. I got the can and sprayed and sprayed and sprayed, and finally the roach came out and gave me a very dirty look. Then he fell down into the bathtub, and I watched him dying with a subtle pleasure because I paid the rent and he didn't. I picked him up with some green-blue toilet paper and flushed him away. That's all there was to that, except around Hollywood and Western, we have to keep doing it. They say someday that tribe is going to inherit the earth, but we're going to make them wait a few months. So that was Cockroach by Charles Bukowski. There's little vibration of doom in that work. Some of his works are wonderfully doom-stricken. And there's a piece of that desperation lodged into that one. The vulgarity of his living conditions. This is a man who lived on a payday bar every day, which was like a couple of nickels or whatever. He didn't eat meals, you know, for like, it was amazing if he ate a meal. He just ate a candy bar every day, and he lived in terrible apartments because he wanted to write. He's spending a lot of time writing, and he's trying to get by. So he would write a poem about a cockroach. And that's the thing about poetry, is you write what you see, especially early on, and especially when you're vital. You know, we went over last week about how there's like outer poetry and there's inner poetry. There's poetry that's a sketch of an external event, or there's a frame or a window poem, which is you're looking from within something out, and you're trying to communicate, or you're trying to express. With poetry, I think better express than communicate, but both is likely and permissible. But that's the nature of it, is he's looking into a memory of this roach, and he's just so used. I mean, the evidence is he's so used to roaches that it's like whatever anymore. Like, they're almost like, hey, what's up? You know? So that's an interesting thing. A poet for the street, a poet who writes poetry about cockroaches. He wrote about all kinds of stuff, folks, but, you know, it's not that this is a family show, but we're trying not to, when it comes to Hank, we'd almost have to put a warning at the top. He's not from our century. He's not from this, what I should say, he's not from this century. So there's certain sensitivities that he doesn't exercise. But I mean, that's how he was, you know. He had it rough. All you got to do is hear about him a little bit, and there'll be sympathy. At least I hope so. I hope there's sympathy. There's been worse. I'll put it to you that way. There's been worse. And so I'm going to read another Bukowski. Yeah, this one's a little longer. The second novel. They'd come around and they'd ask, "You finished your second novel yet?" "No." "What's the matter? What's the matter? You can't finish it?" "Hemorrhoids and insomnia." "Maybe you've lost it." "Lost what?" "You know." Now, when they come around, I tell them, "Yeah, I finished it. Be out in September." "You finished it?" "Yeah." "Well, listen, I gotta go." Even the cat here in the courtyard won't come to my door anymore. It's nice. So that's a memory of a conversation, or a memory of several conversations that annoyed the old fella. They were questioning, and apparently it was an agitation. You could sort of see why, in a way, you know. He dug cats, by the way, as you could see at the end there. There's a cat that but he didn't like anything really. He liked solitude. So the ending is like whatever to him. He's not worried. And that's the thing. There's an axis of power that goes through his work, where he has a priority that he's trying to convey. There's like a vibratory priority. And it's like, you know, the whole universe is viewed through that lens. And that's the thing about vital poetry. Um, he's griping here about the fact that he doesn't get the support or the faith or the trust that he feels, you know, after all the years of people not believing in him. What's funny is he's like kind of insulted a little bit by this guy, because he comes around to needle him. Oh, your book's not done. No, what's wrong? And it's like, maybe there's nothing wrong. He says, what's the matter? What's the matter? He goes. And then when he finally comes around and it is done, and it's like, yeah, it's done, and it's going to be in print, and it's going to be another good one. Then he's like, oh, okay, well, see you later. There's no praise there. There's no, oh, that's great, Hank. How many times has that happened? Where you're telling people about your creative obsession and there's no jazz. It's like they don't care. I like to be excited about that sort of thing. I don't know what in life there is to be excited about unless it's creativity and you know, a spiritual satisfaction that comes from being creative. There's lots of stuff that comes and goes, you know. But in this particular case, when it comes to this interaction, I find it very, very memorable, very applicable. You know, there's a lot of people that have done that, where you're trying to tell them about something cool and it's like they have no place for it. There's no insult. He's not insulting the person, nor am I. He's just pointing out, it's like, yeah, well, nobody seems to relate to me, so it's better, and I'm going to be alone. Solitude's nice for a writer. It's real nice. Hank dug bars and racetracks. That was what he liked. I'm sure he liked diners too, although he doesn't make a specific emphasis of it. I can't imagine he wouldn't. But that was Charles Bukowski, Love is a Dog from Hell, a book I recommend. Again, if you get pale and squeamish from potty language, perhaps not. But if you can grin and bear his vulgarities, there is something there. There's a straight sort of street shaman, something with stop signs and old neighborhoods that you could drive blind, you know. It's his prose is great too, but this book in particular has got a lot of ones where you read them and you're like, whoa, they really grip you. So that's what we're talking about today. We're talking about what grips you in beautiful language, beautiful poetry. What grips you? What gives you pause? They always tell you got to stop and smell the roses, right? You got to look at the goldfish every once in a while. It makes the whole thing valid if you just take some time. It can't be racing from one thing to the next. It has to sometimes be a breath of pause so that you might actually possibly enjoy life for a moment. It's a good thing. Creativity is a good thing for that. So I, Ricky, I'm a poet, I guess. I'm trying. I used to think I was one, and I would go to the mat for it. But, you know, things change over the decades. Strange things happen with your creativity and your creative obsession. Project after project shapes you, reshapes you. But it's good to take a pause in your creativity and go back. So I've been writing some poems last couple months. This one's called Shades of Demise. Boasting in ignorance, feigning significance, just as sidewalk becomes home. Wild animals assume human form, sliding into models of personal devastation. Faithless, faithless. All the world is faithless. Angels standing in a blizzard. Hellspawn dance on gleaming marble. They found him dead in a gutter. Nearby a restaurant's violin music, cold as an alienated neither world, where obliteration devours legions of faces, an age of picnics in the graveyard. A rosy child reared amid bone dust. There next to Auntie's grave leered a hunched entity, hideous, enveloping. A mask of dead white, only vaguely human. Phasing out into deep purple dusk, squealing tires swallow a shriek, dragging overcast, likewise enfolding, a descending howl. Rosie must remember as the decades have dissolved, memories of elder days annihilated. A family plot fills up as does the world. The ghoul of youth fades away into a deathbed's disbelief. See what I mean about that? That's Shades of Demise by Richard Andrew Olkus. That's me, Ricky, in case you're wondering. So as you can see, that one's very creepy. There's something being said there too. There's a certain culture that was brought to my attention where people used to have picnics in graveyards. They would go hang out and have revels and parties by their loved ones' graves, I suppose, or perhaps they would pick one at random. Sometimes I guess it used to be more of a public space, and there was less. I mean, it sounds like a fantastic way for solitude. I mean, unless everyone's doing it, like I said, I suggested it was a culture. That's how it was conveyed to me. But I remember at all the house parties and picnics we had coming up, like either in my own age when I was adventuring or when I was a child, there was always cookouts and everything else. It was like the American dream, you know? Golden twilight spilling through willow branches, wine coolers, and, cheeseburgers, American excess, But the concept of these people, this culture of people having them in graveyards, there was something about it that inspired me. And that's the key, folks. You get some weird little thing that you can't stop thinking about. Chances are it's a newsflash. Newsflash is a very, very good thing for a creative writer. It means you have an idea that will not leave you alone. You have to write it, you have to investigate it, and it has to be expressed in your medium of choice. So this was a poem that grabbed me by the neck, had to be written, because something like that, and look at all that was furnished by that. Just as sidewalk becomes home, wild animals assume human form, sliding into models of personal devastation. During my career, I've seen a lot of stuff in the city. I've seen a lot of stuff. Not trying to bring a bummer, but you see a lot of people on the street. And that's the key, these street observations, the vitality of poetry. I used to walk around with a recorder sometimes. You could take that as I'm a little crazy. You could take that as I'm trying to be efficient. However you take it, that's fine by me. But I used to come up with little poems, or I used to see things that I wanted to sketch and write down later. Sometimes that's how it's got to be. If you don't have a little notebook, or you're too busy, you're working, like you're driving a truck, you're doing this, you're doing that. Doesn't mean you can't have a creative obsession. Just keep your mind on your work and your unconsciousness on the muse, and get a lot of great ideas. But this one's kind of like images from the heart. So it's like an inner poem, and it also has like an outer poem. It's doing both, but there's a lot of heart space in this poem. You think about it. They found him dead in a gutter, nearby a restaurant's violin music, cold as an alienated neither world, where obliteration devours legions of faces, an age of picnics in a graveyard. It goes right to there, you see, a rosy child reared amid bone dust. So there's clearly a passing of Saturn. There's a shadow that passes over this. There's some sort of orientation or fixation on death, but specifically the change, the generational change, because there's a little girl who grew up in that, and then later on her deathbed, she doesn't even really know if it happened. That's sort of what's trying to happen there. I don't know. I don't know if that's more of an elaboration on my part or if that's what is meant, but reading it now, pretending I never wrote it, that's how it seems to me. So what wisdom is there? You saw what Hank did with his cockroach. You saw what he did with his second book. Those poems we read. He was quite a goose in both of those poems. He was showing us the inner workings of things, the mystery that is his life. And his stuff is very embodied. Like he's talking about a person, place, or thing. He's talking about a temporal thing that happened. He's talking about a happening. This poem that I wrote, I don't even know if it happened. It feels like it wants to be a hallucination. Some kind of psychosis, perhaps, on the page. Who knows? Maybe I'm just blubbering here. Maybe I'm making molehills out of mountains, you know? That was a Bushism, folks. Don't take things too seriously. But I had a ball writing that poem, and reading it was really nice. And reading Hank's poetry was also nice. It's nice to read poetry. It's nice to think about these things, to get a little complicated with language. It's nice to go take a stroll through the park when it comes to words, you know? Walk through some twilight, you know? Listen to some geese flying around or talking on a podcast, for that matter. Whatever it happens to be, try some poetry, because I had fun. I had fun doing that. When you have fun, time flies. We're time machines, folks. Trust me, we're time machines. When you follow your bliss, time flows much better. And much better than when you're aggravated or you're being divided and oppressed. It's much better to find creative solace. I thank God for the transcendent. Put it to you that way. That's what gets me through the day. I can't handle calendars and schedules, but you can't handle poetry. You got to smell some roses sometimes. You got to be creative. Well, that was fun. Happens like lightning fast. This has been JWC Livestream. This is Poetic Deep-dive with Ricky. Head over to joeswritersclub.com. Check out our author pages and blogs. Go to joeswriters.club. Sign up there. We have forums. I don't know what's going on with them, but please do. Check out JWC social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all that stuff. And most of all, head over to our YouTube channel. Please like and subscribe, share with your friends so that we can spread the word. Joe's Writers Club isn't going to make you a better writer. You have to do that yourself. But Joe's Writers Club is here to hopefully make you a different writer. Trying to pass on certain philosophies, certain ethics, and moreover, an emphasis of creative obsession. Using art to express yourself. Everyone needs self-expression, and it doesn't have to be political 24 hours a day. In fact, it's best if it's not. Politics is for politicians, folks, but creativity, that enriches the world. So I'd check that out for 10 minutes if I were you. I wouldn't dismiss it so readily. Got a bunch of books that I had fun writing. It's been great. My poetry book will be here soon. It's galloping right around the bend now. Should be here any week. So that'll be fun. Then we'll really start cutting the mustard. Well, thanks for listening. It was fun. And I'll see you guys I don't know, probably this week, probably Thursday for the show we do then.